This is CBC Vancouver News.
Whoever wrote that book, they weren't in residential school with us. They beat us, sexually abused us.
Calls grow for the mayor of Quesnel to resign.
We deserve better.
It started with a controversial book about residential schools.
Quesnel is in my heart, and I'm not about to abandon it.
And
so we are making profiteers think twice about their flipping behavior.
what difference will a tax on flipping homes in BC make to our tight housing market?
There hasn't been, I don't think there's all that much speculation occurring in the market overall.
Plus,
we all love hockey. We're Canadian, people love this sport, and there's got to be room for everybody.
where to play. The closure of a Vancouver rink is bad news for all kinds of hockey teams. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. We start with a shooting in downtown Vancouver tonight that has injured at least one person. Police say they were called just before 8 p.m. to reports of shots fired near Homer Street and West Pender. They say officers found one person with what are said to be serious injuries. Emergency Health Services confirms it took one person to hospital. No one has been arrested yet. A sizable portion of downtown has been closed for several hours. Homer has been shut from Dunsmuir to Hastings, as are other streets nearby. People living inside the police tape were escorted home by officers. The gunfire comes after what's believed to be a targeted shooting on Saturday, just before 6 p.m. near Robson and Richards. Meanwhile, homicide investigators are now looking into the death of a woman in South Vancouver. The force says the body of a 49-year-old was found early this morning near Rosemont Drive and East 57th Avenue. Detectives say at this point they believe her death is targeted. No one has been arrested in that case yet. Calls are growing louder for the mayor of Quesnel to step down. 3 city councillors, several First Nations, and other locals are demanding he resign. As Betsy Trumpeter explains, it began with a controversial book about residential schools handed out by the mayor's wife.
A large protest through the streets of Quesnel. People drum and sing as they march on City Hall Tuesday evening, packing the council chamber, filling the lobby, bringing with them tears and anger.
Mr. Mayor, I have no choice but to ask for your official resignation from office as mayor so we can repair the damage done by you and your wife.
There are growing calls for the mayor to resign that started with a controversial book about residential schools. The book, Grave Error, minimizes the traumatic impact of residential schools and denies that First Nations lost their language and culture there. The wife of Quesnel's mayor has been distributing the book. Mayor Ron Paul says he respects his wife's right to her own opinions. That's sparked outrage.
Us as people, our elders, we deserve better than having to come here to prove that our people went to residential schools, to prove that we were hurt, that we were broken. We deserve better.
Whoever wrote that book, they weren't in residential school with us. They beat us, sexually abused us.
We can't have a community that hands out hate literature and expect people to listen to us and take us seriously.
The chief, along with 3 city councillors and numerous other local people, demanded the mayor step down, but he didn't.
I'm not a quitter, and I am determined to give everything from my heart to see this thing go ahead. Quesnel is in my heart, and I'm not about to abandon it.
The book at the heart of this fight has sold well. It's a top seller on Amazon and is widely available in public libraries. But the Union of BC Indian Chiefs calls it residential school denialism.
I think that it was incumbent upon Mayor Paul to make a clear statement that he rejects that type of racist publication, and clearly he's failed to do that.
There is no mechanism to force a mayor to resign, but local First Nations say they will refuse to work with them, a blow for reconciliation efforts in Quesnel. Betsy Trumpeter, CBC News, Prince George.
If you own property in BC or want to sell or buy, It could soon cost you more if you choose to do so quickly. The province has introduced a new bill for a much talked about flipping tax and a second bill to speed up the process to build new homes. But as Mira Baines reports, critics say the money the tax may bring in could be a bit underwhelming.
The province says the flipping tax is designed to help free up more homes for people who want to live in them, not people looking to profit off of them. BC's finance minister officially introduced the legislation today, but it will be retroactive to include some properties bought in 2023 or 2024.
Income from residential property resold within 2 years will be subject to tax.
Starting next year on January 1st, a 20% tax will be slapped on profit that property owners make after selling the property within the first year of buying it. The tax rate would slide to zero over the course of the second year after purchase.
We are making profiteers think twice about their flipping behavior.
There will be exemptions available in special life circumstances, including death, job relocation, and divorce. Some critics say the tax will not move the dial on housing affordability or availability. The BC Real Estate Association has said they've calculated the tax will lower sales in the province by 1.7% and have a minimal impact on home prices. Some experts believe people may decide to hold off selling their property, leading to less housing supply.
There's not going to be that much of a shift because there hasn't been, I don't think it's all that much speculation occurring in the market overall. In fact, if we think about those who may have purchased and they are in the short term looking to sell, they might delay some of that sale.
Still, the symbolic nature of the tax targeting property flippers sends a strong message, according to this UBC professor.
We really do have to break Canada's, and especially BC's, cultural addiction to high and rising home prices, which has incentivized many people to think like, a home is going to be a great way to accrue wealth windfalls. About
4,000 properties are expected to fall under the tax initially, with revenue going towards housing programs. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
Still with housing, it appears prospective home buyers are still feeling the pinch, with Metro Vancouver home sales down as prices rise. The Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board says the number of homes that changed hands in March fell almost 5% from the same month last year. That's not for lack of supply, though, as the total number of homes listed for sale in March rose over 20% compared to 2023. But prices are up, with the composite benchmark home for Metro Vancouver standing at $1,196,800. That is up 4.5% from a year ago. For the first time in over a decade, the province is putting out a call to the public. It says BC needs more power than ever as the water we depend on to normally generate electricity dries up. Michelle Gassoub has the call for energy.
For the first time in 15 years, BC Hydro is putting out a call for new power.
Today, we're launching a competitive call for new sources of clean electricity.
Demand for power in this province is expected to climb 15% by 2030. The province says in just a few years it must add 3,000 gigawatt hours, enough electricity to service around 270,000 homes.
We've got people who are making the switch to electric vehicles and heat pumps. We've got industry that wants to power up. And so for some time, planning has been in place around a call for power, knowing that we have to integrate more renewables into our system to make it more flexible and resilient to a changing climate.
The call comes as a changing climate is impacting the water BC depends on to generate electricity. In 2022, BC Hydro reduced power generation at some reservoirs because of drought conditions. And last year, it spent $450 million importing power from California. This year, BC will likely have to import energy again.
We are facing a lower snowpack, as you've seen, and that will trigger imports in the coming year. The exact amount is actually quite variable. We get a lot of surprising amount of inflow in the form of the spring rains and the summer rains in the north. So we'll see how that turns out.
Hotter summers have also boosted BC's demands for power.
We're seeing summer peaks now that we didn't have in this province, where we have heating needs as much as we have cooling needs. And I think it's really looking at how do we most efficiently utilize the energy we have.
For this call, the province will prioritize solar and wind energy. To be accepted, projects must be located in BC and connect to BC Hydro's existing systems. And First Nations must have at least 25% equity, a first for this province, and a move nations say is a critical one for economic reconciliation. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
A BC man accused of carrying out 3 attacks in the 90s in Ontario in what became known as the Woodland rapist cold case has been granted bail. 64-year-old Richard Neal is charged with kidnapping, sexual assault with a weapon, and making child pornography. The attacks all happened in Ontario, but Neal will now live with family members in this province. He has to wear an electronic monitoring device, and his lawyer said he's under strict bail conditions. He's due in court again May 6th. The city of Colona has now removed a senior from his own property to enforce a demolition order. For the past 15 years, Janusz Gerlecki has been renovating his home on the edge of Colona without the needed building permits. The city argues those renos made the property unsafe and unsightly. Last month, it told the 73-year-old it was going to tear down his home. And on Tuesday, it forced him off the property. Gerlecki says he's now sleeping in his truck outside his home.
I try to catch up in my head what I do now, where I stayed. Because I don't have a shower, no water, no shave.
A recent engineer's report says the structure of Gerlecki's home does not warrant demolition. He has filed a court injunction that is yet to be heard by a judge. The city is defending its decision, saying the homeowner has had years to deal with the issues on the property. Britannia Rink in East Vancouver is now closed indefinitely while it gets repairs. The rink is home to the city's only women and gender diverse hockey programs. As Janella Hamilton explains, that has players very worried.
Britannia Ice Rink is looking a little bare these days after a brine leak shuttered the facility.
It's devastating to all of us and nowhere else to go.
For this group of hockey players, that means there are no other options to lace up their skates, as Britannia is the only rink in the city that offers women and gender diverse hockey programs for all skill levels.
As someone who identifies as non-binary, being able to come to a space where I know that I am welcome, where I know I can be myself, I don't have to change my pronouns to fit what's going on. Everyone is very welcoming, and it's been great for my own mental health.
The Vancouver Park Board says it is working to identify nearby locations where rink programming can be temporarily relocated.
We've been looking at adjusting our own internal programming versus taking away from other existing groups. So programs such as public skates, and then also just exploring potentially options in other municipalities.
But as a busy single mom, Heather Manis says it's vital the city urgently finds locations that are easily accessible.
We're going to be, that's quite a long drive from where I live in Vancouver, and it just seems a bit ridiculous where there's so many rinks in the city that there's no other all-female programs or, gender diverse programs.
Owakawa, who works for the city, says the park board needs to step up and do better when it comes to improving access and equity.
The co-ed leagues here are very male-dominated. The closure at Britannia has highlighted that this is an important program that people are missing and are needing in their lives, and there should be more inclusive spaces.
The park board says providing accessible gender diverse programming is top priority, but there are no plans to expand the programs beyond Britannia for now.
It's something that we're looking to update over the coming years to support broader access to the community.
We all love hockey. We're Canadian. People love this sport, and there's got to be room for everybody.
There is no word yet on when Britannia Rink will reopen. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
An orphaned orca is still stranded in a Vancouver lagoon after the break, in a Vancouver Island lagoon. After the break, an update on the calf and a close look at recent research from BC. Thanks for joining our commercial-free live stream tonight. Online retail store Sheen is opening up a pop-up in Vancouver next week. The company's grown in popularity on social media for its inexpensive prices and all range of options. But it's also made headlines for its harmful environmental impact and harsh working conditions. The CBC's Karis Hogg hit the streets to find out what shoppers think.
Emerson in Granville at the location of the Sheen pop-up to see what people think about it coming here.
It's like affordable clothing, right? So it's like good for people who can't afford clothes around here, I guess.
I kind of like have mixed feelings on it, but yeah, like I feel like everyone gets things off there, whether it's like little beauty bits or little home decors and stuff, so I think it'll be fun.
It just feels weird that they're doing an in-person store because I feel like their quality is known for being really bad.
So you want to like make sure it's good quality before you get it, and with Sheen you never know. So it's better to check it in person, of course.
It's good if we have a physical store because we can see how the clothes look like on us.
I don't know, some people don't like the fact that they're not very, what was the word I'm looking, ethical.
I just haven't heard good things about the quality of, and the labor practices. Seems really sketchy.
I think they kind of sell things really cheap and maybe not the best quality stuff.
I don't know. I don't want to support their business, but at the same time, they have really cheap stuff. So
I've only heard kind of negative things about it.
I will definitely check it out when it comes, just to have a nosy and see.
It's good and bad at the same time. So I guess if it's good for you, go ahead. If you don't like to, don't go.
Personally, I don't think it's the right idea. A little too fast for this old guy.
Well, if you take a walk on the seawall, you might spot an animal or two, an otter, a seal, maybe a whale, but you're not likely to see it on the pathway. Unless, of course, it's Emerson, the elephant seal. He set up shop right by a city bench in Saanich, taking his annual molt straight to the people, and boy, is he drawing a crowd.
Normally what they do is they'll fence off and put some signs up so that the community knows not to go near them. You don't want to disturb them when they're molting.
What? Scared. Scared? Scared?
Yeah.
Why are you scared?
I don't like it. What's that gonna do?
He's resting. He's molting.
I couldn't believe that this was actually happening, that this seal was here.
He's well known to them, and he shows up here a few times. But they've tracked him from all the way from California, and he's apparently a resident around here now. Look at that, he's wagging his tail right now. He seems to like you guys.
Looks fabulous. I wouldn't mind blazing out like he is at the moment.
An orphaned orca calf has been stranded in a lagoon near Zabalos for 2 weeks now. And rescue officials say they now plan to airlift that young animal to open water. Rescuers say the whale seems healthy and has been looking for something to eat, but the way out of that lagoon is shallow and hard to get through. Officials say the calf will now be placed in a sling and lifted out of the lagoon by a helicopter. It will then be held in a pen as they wait for its pod to be nearby. So the last few weeks have seen a deluge of orca research published, much of it done right here in BC. Our Darius Madavi joins us now to tell us about the world of killer whales. Darius, our province has seen several types of orcas, but perhaps to a more casual eye, they may all seem the same. Explain that a bit.
Right. Well, a trained eye can see the differences between, for example, BC's southern resident orcas and transient orcas. I don't have that trained eye, but some people do, because these are more than just different populations. They have different shapes, different sizes, different food sources, different habits, and different patterns on those patches on them, those white patches, which is why scientists classify orcas into ecotypes. Now, if you take a look here, you can see resident whales eat salmon. They have those rounded fins. The southern ones are in the Salish Sea, and the northern resident whales are found north of Vancouver Island up to Alaska. Then you have the transient whales, or the bigs orcas. They eat marine mammals like seals or whales. They have a more pointed fin and a wider range, including further away from the coast. Then there's another one that you might be less familiar with, offshore whales that are orcas that eat sharks and large fish. They have a more rounded fin and are further from the coast, but they don't stray too far. And then lastly, we have one potentially new type of orca recently found in a new paper, but they're found much further offshore. They eat mammals, including sperm whales and also turtles, and they have both rounded and pointed fins. So I know that was a lot, but this last group, which researchers say is likely a new population, was discovered thanks to some detailed orca genealogy when UBC master student Josh McInnes was building killer whale family trees from a massive database of images and found 49 images of orcas that didn't seem to fit in anywhere. Here's what his research supervisor and UBC prof Andrew Treitz told us.
We've tentatively called it the oceanic population of killer whales. We suspect that they are distant cousins of transient killer whales, but we don't know whether or not they still get together for social events on occasion, or whether or not they cut the family lines, hundreds, if not thousands of years ago.
Darius, how do we know whether this really is a new population? What will it take?
The key is data, and fortunately, since publishing their paper, Treitz says they've gotten a massive influx of images to analyze. But by far the most reliable way to find out where these orcas fit into the family tree, or perhaps the evolutionary tree if we're talking larger timescales, is to test their DNA, which is why McInnes is heading out to the open ocean to try and collect some samples. But this all leads us to another paper that was published recently, which called our whole system for categorizing orcas into question. Right now, every single orca in the world, from Antarctica to BC to the North Atlantic, is considered one species. But should they be? The paper compared transient and resident killer whales, including the ones right here in BC, which never mate, even though they can often be found in the same areas, like in the Salish Sea. And the paper highlighted other differences, including major ones in their skulls, as discovered by co-author and UBC grad student Carissa Fung. Here's what one expert told us.
Modern genetic techniques have shown that these residents and the transients, now known as Biggs killer whales, probably split from a single lineage historically or prehistorically 200,000 or 300,000 years ago. And so they've been on different evolutionary trajectories for many thousands of years.
So some scientists argue the species status ought to change, but will they, and if so, when?
It's hard to say. I mean, this is really just a first step. This paper is a formal suggestion that some ecotypes of orca receive species status, specifically the resident and the transient orcas. From here, the Committee on Taxonomy for the Society for Marine Mammalogy, it's quite a mouthful, let's say they accept the designation. Once they analyze it, what happens with all the other populations of orcas around the world? Multiple experts told us this could be opening the door to a lot more changes.
Maybe down the road, a new species will be proposed for this offshore killer whale form as well. But again, the distinctions aren't quite as obvious and as significant as the differences between the residents and the Biggs killer whales, which is why this is a pretty straightforward case to bring forward.
And of course, perhaps the biggest question, at least if you ask me, what will these new species be called? The paper did suggest a new name for the resident and transient ecotypes, but those are far from set in stone. And given how many different populations and types of orcas there are out there, the committee may decide to go with a more formalized approach than what was proposed in the paper. But honestly, Dan, whatever they go with, it's going to be hard to top the original. Orcinus orca, the current scientific name for all orcas, means whales of the kingdom of the dead. And it doesn't get much better than that.
About sums it up. Science and climate specialist Darius Madavi, thanks very much. And there's a live shot of downtown Vancouver facing the North Shore. The sun is on its way for the South Coast. Darius will have your BC-wide forecast after this.
Is it beyond intelligence? As if the soul need not exist.
That's a little taste of Evolution, a new song from Sheryl Crow where she explores her concerns around the use of artificial intelligence in the music industry. Now, Crow is part of a group of more than 200 artists who are now calling on AI developers and technology companies to stop using AI to undermine or devalue their work. Now, the letter is from an organization called Artists' Rights Alliance. Other artists lending their support include Elvis Costello, Nicki Minaj, the estate of Frank Sinatra, and Canadian artists such as the Arkells and Diana Krall. In a recent interview with Tom Power on Q, the musician Sheryl Crow talked about her concerns over AI and its use, increasing use, in the music industry.
You know, it terrifies me that artists can be brought back from the dead. It terrifies me that I can sing to you a song that I had absolutely nothing to do with, and you'll believe it.
Jen Jacobson is the executive director of the group that organized the letter. She says that AI is also a concern for estates managing the rights of artists such as Frank Sinatra.
A lot of that royalty potential is being cut into by AI in various ways. You know, sometimes we're seeing now these deep fakes and voice clones where people are taking a famous artist and exploiting their likeness that way.
And with the abilities of AI software increasing, musicians already struggling with decreasing income from music streaming rights are worried about being replaced. Tiff Merritt is an Americana musician.
I've spent 25 years honing my touch, my voice, my point of view, my writing sensibilities, and that's now being used to train AI to imitate and replace me. And robots do not get royalties. Their content is free.
Organizers and artists are calling on AI developers and technology companies to work with artists ethically so that this technology doesn't further devalue their work. Eli Glaster, CBC News, Toronto.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Time for our BC-wide weather forecast with science and climate specialist Darius Madavi, who is tracking a wildfire.
Yes, and fortunately, a bit of good news. As of this morning, this fire was deemed out of control. It's just west of Merritt, right around the area of Canmore, if we zoom in. And it was listed as out of control by BC Wildfire Service. As of around 3 p.m. today, it has shifted into being held, so sort of the yellow status. Hopefully, as conditions continue to improve tomorrow, we have another cool day. Some showers are expected in this area. Hopefully, they make it over here. We might see that be shifted into the under control status, which would be good news. The fire is still relatively small. It's only between 3 and 4 hectares, but as you know, things can change quickly, and it is close to a habited area. So fortunately, BC, the fire danger is low, and tomorrow I would expect this would come down a little bit more, if anything, if not staying the same. So a little bit of good news there in terms of that fire. No major issues expected as of now. Now, if we move to the rest of the province, you can see that even though we are expecting some showers in southern BC tomorrow, most of it is going to be concentrated along the BC-Alberta border as we get some some snow up there. Most of it will be on the east side, but some of it could leak over into BC as well. And then if we see here a bit of cloud for many places, but pretty much north of the Caribou, we're just looking pretty clear and sunny for the day. And then we see a little bit more precipitation coming up into the southern interior tomorrow afternoon and continuing into Friday. We see that cloud continue, but that precipitation start to clear out. And then really the next thing to watch out for is this system coming to the north coast later. Some models are suggesting that we may get some rain here on the coast on Saturday, late Saturday. At the moment, I'm not seeing that. I don't think it's going to happen, but some of the models do have it in there, so it is a possibility, but I wouldn't count on it really. Today, conditions, again, temperatures dropped, but starting to come up again as we get later into the end of the week. In terms of conditions, again, just a bit of activity in the south, but generally calm across the province. And if we shift to our 5-day forecast here in Vancouver, you can see we're going to have a cloudier start to the morning tomorrow, especially in the valley, but quickly clearing up for lots of sunshine. It's expected to stick through the weekend as long as that precipitation doesn't come out of nowhere.
Okay, we'll watch for it. Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
And that is your late news for Wednesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news at any hour, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Have a good night.